wanted to come on and talk about grace and mercy today. So today is day 9 of my perfectly imperfect, beautiful life. And the people that came up for me were my parents. And the reason why my parents came up was because so let me give a disclaimer. I have really, really good parents. I have parents I know who absolutely do anything for me. I have no doubt about their love. I have no doubt about their guidance. I have no doubt about their loyalty to me. I know that my parents will literally give up their lives so that I can live. But there was a time that some things had come up for me during therapy, and probably like a little bit before therapy, probably like really in my teenage years. I had some anger and some frustration when it came to my parents, and I didn't feel like I could express this because they were my parents. And I've always been like a very obedient child, and so I just felt like, I don't know, I just didn't feel like you could say anything about your parents, you know? And so I remember going through therapy, and then even the sister circle that I was a part of. And when things would come up for me when it came to my parents, I would always say, but they're really good parents, but you know, they did this for me. I just would always feel like I had to sandwich it with really good things. And I remember one of the sisters in the group who just stopped me, and she was like, you do know your parents are human, right? You do know that it's okay to be angry and frustrated with your parents. And in that moment, it was an epiphany. I didn't feel like I could, right? I feel like for some reason, I felt like it was dishonorable. And she was like, you're not dishonoring them. You can express whatever it is that you're feeling. And then, but she was like, again, don't stay there. This is a part of your healing. This is a part of your growth. But I allowed myself to process that. But I did not have a conversation with my parents. And I am blessed. I know everyone doesn't have this, but I am blessed with parents who are very receptive to conversations. They take ownership for anything that they may feel like they have done wrong, and they will apologize. And so after a while, when it became too heavy for me, I guess when I felt like I was bursting at the seams, I actually went and had conversations with them individually at different times. And again, they were apologetic. They were saddened by it, even admitted to already knowing it, you know. But I was holding it in for so long because I felt like I could not express it. But let me tell you where the grace and mercy came in. When similar situations sometimes came up, or similar feelings, I started seeing the reflection of me with my parents. And it allowed me to give them grace and mercy, because it was the grace and mercy that I also wanted for myself. And so I'm a firm believer that if you don't learn the lesson, it will repeat itself over and over and over again until it's learned. And so I remember years ago, when I first left my mom's house, I was 18 years old. And I told myself then, like, I'm never coming back. And it wasn't because I was mad. I just thought I was grown. And so I didn't feel like, for some reason, I felt like I failed if I ever had to go back home. But I lived out of state for a couple of years, and I decided to return back to the state, and I needed to live with my mom temporarily. Now, that was the last place I wanted to live, because again, I'd already given this disclaimer that I was never coming back. And then that's the exact place that I had to go to. But you know what? Spiritually, there was so much more to it that had to happen. I had to go there because there were still some things that needed to be resolved between me and my mom. There are times where I had to go back and see my dad because there are still conversations that we needed to have that needed to be resolved. And so I remember that living with my mom at that time, who she was like all excited about me being there, I got frustrated. And I was frustrated. I had moments of frustration because I started seeing my mom like really as a human being. Like during that time, she was not just my mom. She became my sister. She became my roommate. She became my friend. Sometimes she was my child, you know, and probably vice versa. She probably realized the same things about me during that same time. But there was so much healing that happened, and I'm really grateful for that opportunity that I had with her. Because if it didn't, we'd probably be going through the same things again that happened during that time. And it wasn't like some big outburst or anything. We just had pockets of things that happened during that time. But I was angry. I got frustrated and I had to deal with it. And then again, like I said yesterday, I was dealing with my emotions with people who I also knew were responsible, with people who I knew would call me out on my stuff. So if I had something to say about my mother, or if I had something to say that was frustrated me about my father, then they would say, well, what about you? Well, didn't you do this? Or think about it in this situation. Your mom was a little girl. And so then I thought about that too. I was like, gosh, my mom, with her parents, my mom had a story before I was even born. My mom had a story outside of me even while I was born. And so I had to think about her and her own personal heartaches. I had to think about my father and his own personal heartaches. And it also made me dig a little bit deeper with them. You know, I wanted to know more about their childhood. I wanted to know more about their stories. I wanted to know more about their experiences with my grandparents. And I prior to that, I had placed my grandparents on a pedestal. I didn't have the same experiences that my mom had with my grandparents. And you know, they were viewed as martyrs. And then my mom would say, you know, her experience, and of course it didn't change my view of my grandparents because my experience with them was my experience. But I made sure to give my mom grace and mercy because of her own experiences. And it just made me look at things completely different. So, and I say the same thing too, like when I'm kind of going off on a tangent, like let's say for instance, like if a person walks by you and they don't smile, like you smile, you say hi, and they don't do the same. I used to take it personal, even if I didn't know the person. But now I look at it different. I'm like, I don't know if that person had a bad day. I don't know if that person even saw me walk by. I don't know if I reminded that person of somebody they didn't like. I have no idea. That person had a whole nother story before they walked by me, and that was just the end of it. So I just say grace and Mary, mercy. Even our parents deserve this. And we owe it to them to even learn a little bit more about them. I mean, even recently, I've been going deeper and asking my grandmother questions, and even there's some stuff that's come up with her. And this is the thing too. We grew up in different eras, and I know that doesn't give them a pass, but like there's a lot going around about mental health and getting therapy and talking things through, but other eras just didn't do that. So even if you try and you make these attempts to have these conversations with your family, and understand that they had stories, even if they don't get it, then be okay with that. Because a lot of times they're open to telling us a story, but they might not realize their own errors or their own faults. And so that's where your therapy, that's where you channeling and doing your and finding other areas to use that energy comes in. Like I said, find a different outlet, find somebody to talk to, find a trusted friend, write it out. There's a lot of times where I wrote things out. I used to journal for a long time. I need to do better when it comes to journaling. But there was a long period of time where I did journal and then talk things out in journals. So again, grace and mercy, even with yourself. You know, if you're a parent and you feel like you have made some error, then think about your own story as well and give yourself some grace and mercy, because a lot of times we don't do that, and we'll just stay stuck and spinning in what we have done wrong. When we resolve it, we process it, and then we move on. All right, so stay tuned for day 10. Again, subscribe, and I thank you guys for following. I'll see you guys tomorrow.